Okay, I'm just putting the camera a little bit ahead of the sun. The sun's gonna run right into my camera over the next 20 minutes, half hour as it's rolling. I'm leaving the trees in the camera as well, so that people know what it is we're looking at when they come to these videos. Somewhere around there. So what we're doing here is looking at the mineral streets, digital collection of electromagnetic nanocarbon from the cloud level is what we're doing. Got a red filter on the camera. There's a red filter on the camera, and what that's doing is adding some contrast. The reason why I'm aiming at to the sun but not right into the sun is for lights and shadows, lights and shadows. You hear me talking about lights and shadows all the time. Critical, important, visually anyways, it's important. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm leaving the tree down in the corner of the camera, so that we know that we're looking at the cloud level and not at snowbanks or human skin or a running river or a whatever, trees. And the reason why that's important is because the true creator builds everything using what we call the images, the faces of feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. Over and over and over again, this is what the builders build in the images of feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. So that's why I usually try to point out when I'm doing these research vids of where I'm at, what I'm looking at, because if I'm looking into the water, it's going to be feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. And no matter what I do, it's going to be feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. I'm going to come down a little bit lower and see if I can get somewhere around there without getting too much glare in my camera. And we're going to looking around. Let's see. Yeah, it's all coming through now. Yeah. Yeah, so I can actually stay right around here. And I should be good for about a half hour, 40-minute research vid. And that's what I'm going to do. And I might bring this back a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, the imagery is banging. It's really, really good. I'm wondering if I should go out the other side with it. Let's see. Could stay here because these are all coming through now too, but eh. It looks good there, I guess. So I'm just hanging out in the bait car. I'm gonna see if I can bait them by here, and if they can, I'll throw the camera on them as they come by. I have not seen anybody this morning, and my clock was wrong too. It's not early afternoon. It's early morning. It's still only 10:15 or something like that. I was saying in the last research vid I was doing a couple hours ago was about I was talking a little bit about turning our small towns into smart cities, and they have. There's a lot of important things that fall into a lot of that, like the LED lights, the damage and the harm that they're doing to the humans. Um, I'll talk a little bit about those things as we move through the next series, as I always do. I always throw a little bit about it in there. But the thing is to throw people at things that they. No, actually, they can see them. You guys can see them. You can see that the LED light poles are all gone up around your towns and cities. You are able to see the antennas, these huge, huge, powerful antennas that are supposedly for the cell phones. That's what they're all based on, is for cell phones. Um, we can talk about the twisted nonsense of satellites, that we're told that satellites are where a lot of our cell phones are being picked up. Satellite footage and satellite phone service and satellite internet and all this kind of thing. But yet, when you go up on the mountains, which is closer to the satellites, right? Because you're going up the mountain, then you should be getting closer to the satellites that they tell you that are there, that your phone is running off of your GPS. They tell you your GPS is being run from satellites. It's satellite. No, they're not. They're being run from the fucking antennas that are all over the place. And these antennas are big and they're everywhere and they're very powerful. But yet, no one will go and look for themselves and make their own determinations. They'll wait, like I was saying about the pipeline. They wait for someone to come out, and then all of a sudden that person is considered to have the truth. Um, Examples of the smart cities. Smart cities came out 30 years ago, that they started talking about implementing them, as they were already implementing them. And then you go to 20 years ago, where they were already being installed in a big way, massive, massive updates to our infrastructure that had nothing to do with better roads, better trains, better airplanes, and nothing to do with any of that. It was cameras, 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 cameras. The Chinese called it the Belt and Road Initiative, I believe it was. China, for the last 50 years, more so in the last 30 years, buying up a lot of our farmlands, roads, buildings, properties, infrastructures, and implementing the same thing that they got going on in China. It's really crazy that the 330 million so-called free Americans won't go look for themselves. And then United Nations comes out about, I don't know, 12 to 15 years ago and starts leaking all their documents. The same documents that told you about the mineral streets that I'm showing you right now that you all deny and you will not go look at. If you do go look at them, you won't look at them for what they really are. For the last 6 years, I've been showing you guys that what you think is clouds are not natural. They don't come from what you call nature or God. That's not what this is all about. It's a human takedown. There's nothing godly about it. But if everyone woke up and everyone went and looked at the true Creator's work, then we would not allow ourselves to be lied to like this, and we would not be lying to each other and ourselves like this, the way that we are. Okay, so the United Nations goes ahead and does their big leak. They leak accidentally, supposedly, right? It's so funny. Hundreds of pages of documents about mineral streets. They call them something else. They don't call them chemtrails either. They call it geoengineering. The United Nations. They call it geoengineering. Sky seeding the skies, seeding the skies. So they're laying out the carbon seeding in the skies. They say that they're doing this. They tell us that they're doing it, but then they retract it later once everybody gets a hold of it, and then they say, oh no, that wasn't us, that was some propaganda, false bullshit from InfoWars or whatever, you know. And they do the same thing with the smart cities, smart grids, intelligence telling you, that your vehicle can be tracked everywhere you go, and then everybody says, "Oh no, what do they care if I go to the grocery store?" They're limiting where you can go, what you can do, and this is not a good guy, bad guy thing. This is everyone is a bad guy in this situation. We've given up all of our wealth goes right to the top. The top, they say 10%, and that may be true, but then there's another 1% that's really controlling it all. And yet the 7.8 billion zombies won't go look for themselves and see things for themselves. It's amazing. It's amazing. So the United Nations was telling us in their secret documents that they somehow leaked to the entire population that they were going to go forward with this geoengineering project that had already been going on for 30 years before they even told you that it will someday be going on. That's the other funny thing about it. It turned into a geoengineering project at the start of the Industrial Revolution, and that was never talked about. It was never leaked. It was never put out. And then when they started doing it in the jets, they laid out the jets, and then you go on people like the Canadian prepper who still believes in a small portion, but he still believes in it. A small portion of the reality. In other words, he'll show all the airplanes and the flight patterns. He likes doing that. The Canadian prepper there. And he's showing all these flight patterns stuff, but I've been through that with people. When you're looking at the mineral streets, the mineral street jets are not on the flight patterns. Not that I've ever come across anyways. Now, when I look at his computer, it almost seems like he's got a lot of flight patterns on his computer. All he has to do is go outside his door on a day like today when they're mineral streeting the fucking shit out of us. The mineral streets are all over the fucking skies. So if you look up the flight patterns that are leaving and coming and going around my area, which I can do, we can all do. We all have these stupid cell phones. Let's use them for something positive instead of using them for negative things. And then when you go and look at what the United Nations is telling you what they're doing, it explains all the fungus and the mold and picking up all over this earth. Why would the fungus and the mold? Think about it. If you're dropping a carbon layer in the atmosphere, you're not only changing the light spectrum, because that's what they're doing. They're changing the light spectrum. This is provable. There's no doubt in our minds, right? You can go and remember anybody that's 50 years old or older. If you have a half a wit, half a brain, think about it. The sun appeared in our eyes to be yellow most of our childhood as we were growing up. We didn't have very many white sun days where the sun looked white. That didn't start happening until the 80s. And it took all throughout the 80s into the 90s before people finally started seeing the sun as being a white entity rather than a yellowish entity. Now, this doesn't even speak for how the plants, the insects, the other rodents, and fish life, ocean life, whatever. It doesn't go to say how they see and perceive the light energy that we now produce. You're all convinced that it's God, that it's Jesus, that it's Mother Nature that is doing these things and causing these actions and reactions when it's not. It's humans that are doing it, and you're giving way too much credit to the others. So the mineral streets have a lot of different uses. The United Nations talks about them. Now they have false reasonings behind them. They're also not elected. There's no voting that goes on to it, because if there was, then somebody in the crowd would have the ability, like myself, for example, to speak up and say, well, wait a minute. If you're spending $20 billion a year in the United States' tax money, Canada's spending probably like $3 billion a year in their spending in order to produce all these mineral streets all over the skies like they're doing. People don't think about how different the clouds are today from the way they were just 30 years ago. It was a slow boil. And now that we're at a high boil, everyone's faces are stuck in these fucking cell phones, so they're not paying attention. They can't even think back anymore. Their memories are blasted. Their brains are fucking shot. They think that life is based on what they've seen on their television screen over the last 30, 40, 50 years of their lives. They think life is based on and reality is held in that stupid little cell phone. And whatever newscasters and politicians and scientists and other religious figures such as the churches, and they're going by that, what they're being told, not by what they can see with their own eyes. So this is all bad. And these are all bad things that are happening. But yet no one will look. No one will even look. So therefore, if the United Nations came out and told us this plan openly, instead of playing all the games they play where release documents and then tell people that the documents were fake and that they're conspiracy theory and all this kind of shit. Yeah, well, we can see them. We can see them with our own fucking eyes. So how can they be a conspiracy theory? Fucking so stupid, man. But I've had 15 years now or more of showing people and trying to talk about the mineral streets. They will not look. They will not look. The most average, normal people won't look. And every year I say, okay, well, they're turning up the boil, so maybe this year I'll have better luck. Maybe this year I'll have some luck in waking up my family and friends or someone out there, And every year, no, they just prove more and more that to be good zombie slaves. So if you're changing the light from the sun, which most humans think is impossible, they think it's in nature's hands, in God's hands, that kind of thing. They use what they call climate change and blame it on the average zombie slave. The average zombie slave takes the blame. He says, yeah, it's all us. It's all us. And at the same time, ignores the mineral streets that are being laid out all over the fucking sky. What they do is exactly what the United Nations tells you they're doing. They are doing. But they tell it to you and then take it back and then say, no, we're not telling you that. That's some conspiracy group online and whatever. But just look at what it is they're doing. So if they told us in their documents, and they did, yeah, we're going to have smart cities. You're all going to be logged. We're going to know everything that you do of every second of every day. You're going to be looked at as no better than a computer chip or a computer program. So your individual souls, the souls that belong to the true creator. We are living in the true creator's energy. But yet that benefit and that honesty and truth gets overridden. And the things that are coming out of my mouth sound very foreign and alien to anyone listening to them. Because they say, true creator, oh, he must be talking about God. No, I'm not. The God that we were told about has nothing to do with anything. The God that we're told about in the human realm, all the way back, we're going, again, if we can count on any time being based on reality, which it really cannot, but in order for you to know what the hell I'm talking about, let's just go back to the geocentric model. You know that everything in the geocentric model was a lie. The whole thing about looking at the stars and making all these images out of the stars, doing the dot to dot in the stars, they call them constellations. It was all a lie. Because when you see the true creator's work and you know the true creator's energy, you can see that the true creator, that's not what the stars were all about. The stationary stars are energy. The energy, all the energy is in the stationary stars. And those stationary stars are perfectly lined up and aligned and go through what we call, in the human realm, what we would call, if we ever talked about it, a voltage regulator. That is the moon. Now, the moon also works as the false creator / creator's clock. And there is so much information to get out of knowing how to use that clock. So much. I've only tapped into a little fucking dot of it, and it's already blowing me away. Just figuring out the timelines in the moon. The false creator / creator, your real true God, the creator of the biosystem, the builder of the biosystem in that sense, and not really the builder, because see, the false creator / creator uses the true creator's builders to appropriate his builds. And I don't like calling them him or his or whatever either, so it's a little bit tough as I'm talking to try to stay focused without pointing those things out. So if we're not going to be willing to recognize and even see the false creator / creator's work, the true creator's work, be able to let me finish this part. So the stationary stars, the energy that is the stationary stars, comes down through the moon, transfers the energy through the earth, not to the earth, through the earth, back out the other side, what we would call the other side. We do not live on a spinning wet pararocket ball, but we also don't live on a flat earth. That's not the way it is. But yet the geocentric model and the heliocentric model, both lies, are what we've been living by for the last 2,000 to 3,000 years, supposedly. Possibly even longer. So if it took us a couple thousand years from a massive reset, a total reset, And that's what happened. I don't know which resets were total resets and which resets were partial resets. Any information that I give you from those resets is based on what I can see, hear, feel, and know by using the true creator's energy to travel, to move around in, to communicate with. So therefore, it's useless for me to talk about them on any of my videos. No one's going to understand it. No one's going to believe it. They're just going to move on. So therefore, I don't really give a lot to it. But even the things that I can see here in the human realm improve to you, you will not look. You will not, for some reason, you will not look. I'm assuming the programming is why no one will look. Let's see where those going. Let's see, they're over here now. So all the mineral streets that they were dumping out all morning have all pretty much stopped. I only see one or two coming through. Matter of fact, there's one right there that just went through, so let's go in on them, I guess. It's not fucking around. It's right above that wire. Right there. We'll just watch it open up while I finish up this video. Somewhere right there, I guess. So the mineral streets having several different, many, not several, more than several, many different purposes. Okay, so we know that they can lay out these carbon mineral streets all over the atmosphere, and they turned our blue sky over the last 50 years. They've turned our blue sky into a white powdery blue. You never get the dark blue sky that we used to get when we were children. That's not that long ago. I'm talking about just 30, 40 years ago. The blue skies we used to have back then are not the blue skies of today. But yet nobody pays attention enough to notice. Nobody cares. We're all busy working our busy lives. And therefore no one has the time to go look and investigate and even think. Even to think, do their own thinking for themselves. They can't. They got to go to school and be educated to not think about what it is I'm showing you. Their eyes are taught to not look. Their brains are taught to not think about it. Go to church to be deceived. To be deceived. Okay, so that's one use of them, is to cause a barrier, a carbon barrier between the atmosphere and the ground. Okay, several things happen here. Number one, the sun that used to be yellow was better for human intent. It was better for human lives, all bio lives for that matter, that I can, as far as I can tell. Plant life, animals, humans, everybody ran better on it. Even certain insects. So then when you change the lighting to a white light and we leave the yellows, we know the damage that these white lights do, because they're white light, blue light. Blu-ray, think of Blu-ray light, you know. So that's one thing. So in other words, vitamin D, the fact that the sun's light was a cleanser and was cleaning, the system out and all that, that's all gone. It's not doing that, at least not to its potential for good human life. Definitely not anymore. I'm looking around to see if I can keep the camera on some other areas, but I think I'm just gonna have to stay here and get what I can get. Okay, causing the barrier in the atmosphere so that funguses and molds end up flourishing on the ground level of the earth, right? That's another big one. Now, that would not happen on a spinning wet pararocket ball, but we don't live on a spinning wet pararocket ball. Outer space is not what we're told it is. These are all huge fucking lies. And you guys throw trillions of dollars a year at space explorations and every fucking commercial, every television show, every news broadcast. Everybody is selling you deep, deep lies about, because every second it's coming out of their mouth. The moon, this, NASA, that, Elon Musk, Mars, that. They're naming off all these what they call planets. In the geocentric model, you would have called it the wandering stars. The wandering stars was closer to the truth than planets, but yet both are lies. So really, where am I going to go with it? Where am I going to go? You have to go look for yourselves. You have to look at everything for yourselves. Start with the moon. As far as proving that outer space is nonsense and that it's nothing that you were told, and the real truth about what outer space really is much better, easier to understand, better for everybody, especially the human population who's carrying the most consciousness out of all the other species. At least as far as we know, anyways. Maybe we don't. Maybe all the other animals see things for what they are, and therefore, that's why they're murdered off as much as they are. If they had communication, ability to communicate with us, they'd probably just be like, what the fuck are these assholes doing? All right, some other things about the mineral streets. Since I'm all over the place, I'm always doing this. I jump all over the place. All right, so the mineral streets. So they dump them off in the atmosphere. So now you have there's something called metellus, which I very rarely talk about because again, having to argue and fight with everybody, it sucks. If everything out of my mouth causes an argument, a fight, and a debate, things that you can just go simply see for yourselves, watch them for yourselves. The metellus are another one. The metellus, they're an electromagnetic nanocarbon is what they are, and they're the building blocks of all bio-life. Matter of fact, they're the building blocks of all life, including rocks, stones, dirt, dust, all life, things even that you think are dead and are not alive. They even are responsible for their lives because they actually do have what we would have to consider life. But the biometallus, we go from an electromagnetic, what I call I have to branch these metallus off into 4 or 5 different categories because they're very, very tiny, obviously. So that's why I started calling them nanoless metallus. So and nothing is spelled the way that society spells it. I can't. So I have to spell nanoless as Nanales, nanoless, nanoless metallus, because even nano is a human derived word and it gets misconstrued. And next thing I know, people are accusing me of claiming a matrix, and it's not a matrix. Although there are aspects of what we know of the matrix in the system. In other words, carbons, that it's all carbons. I'm watching in my mirror because I think I just seen one of my buddies drive by. Okay, so you have a nanoless metallus, then you have an electrometallus. Those metallus can be used as building blocks for anything, including plastics and like I said, stones, rocks, dirt, that kind of thing, glass. In other words, glass. All these different things. Those are those metallus, carbon form. Now, one of the first bio species, one of the first bio creatures that they build are biometallus, which I have names for those as well. That they start getting larger and larger, still to the point where humans can see them, feel them, understand them. Well, they thrive on white light, the biometallists do. They love it. That's why we're noticing a huge die-off with humans, because all these things are being controlled. The funguses and molds are being written off as suspicious, and they're being labeled as sicknesses and ailments in humans, and then vaccines that are also created that I got to watch out about how I talk about it all. But also, same thing, they get pulled into play because somebody out there knows about the Metellus. The medical industry tells us that they themselves know that there are tens of thousands of biometallus out there that they do not know about. For some reason, they don't feel it's important enough to even investigate them. They don't feel that it's why? Because then you'd have answers for pneumonias, right? Because it's a airborne biometallus. They're airborne biometalluses that come in so many different millions of different strains, and they're only telling you that there's tens of thousands of them that they're not even willing to look at. They don't even want to talk about them. Come get our medicine that will actually, some of them will, very few, will kill these metellus. But you got to remember, these biometellus, they're just going to break down when you kill them and break back down to their original carbon forms, just like we all do when we die, and they can be rebuilt, immediately rebuilt. So if you're going to feed them by giving them the good white light that they enjoy, if you're going to feed them by dumping certain carbons out of the jets, right, all over the fucking place, and you're not going to allow the human population to know and understand what it is you're doing, and they're going to act like they don't want to know. Well, they should want to know, but they act like they don't care, and they don't want to see it, but they should.